Imagine if the entertainment industry created a video game in which you could decapitate police officers, kill them with a sniper rifle, massacre them with a chainsaw, and set them on fire. Think anyone would buy such a violent game? They would, and they have. The game, Grand Theft Auto, has sold more than 35 million copies, with worldwide sales approaching $2 billion. 2 weeks ago, a multi-million-dollar lawsuit was filed in Alabama against the makers and marketers of Grand Theft Auto, claiming that months of playing the game led a teenager to go on a rampage and kill 3 men, 2 of them police officers. Can a video game train someone to kill? Grand Theft Auto is a world governed by the laws of depravity.
Sorry, but I need this.
See a car you like? Steal it. Someone you don't like? Or who had played Grand Theft Auto day and night for months. Attorney Jack Thompson, a longtime crusader against video game violence, is bringing the suit.
Are you saying that Devin Moore shot 3 people in the head because of a video game?
What we're saying is that Devin Moore was, in effect, trained to do what he did. He was given a murder simulator. He bought it as a minor. He played it hundreds of hours, which is primarily a cop-killing game. It's our theory, which we think we can prove to a jury in Alabama, that but for the video game training, he would not have done what he did.
Moore's victims were Ace Mueller, a 911 dispatcher, James Crump, a police officer, and Arnold Strickland, another officer who was on patrol in the early morning hours of June 7, 2003, when he brought in Devin Moore on suspicion of stealing a car. Moore had no criminal history and was cooperative as Strickland booked him inside the Fayette police station. Then suddenly, inexplicably, Moore snapped.
This is where it happened. According to Devin Moore's own statement, he lunged at Officer Arnold Strickland, grabbing his .40 caliber Glock automatic, and shot Strickland twice, once in the head. Officer James Crump heard the shots and came running. Moore met him about here in the hallway and fired 3 shots into Crump. One of those shots was in the head. He kept walking down the hallway towards the door of the emergency dispatcher. Once here, he turned and fired 5 shots into Ace Mueller. Again, one of those shots was in the head. Along the way, Moore had grabbed a set of car keys. He went out the door to the parking lot, jumped into a police cruiser, and took off. It all took less than a minute, and 3 men were dead.
The video game industry gave him a cranial menu that popped up in the blink of an eye in that police station, and that menu offered him the split-second decision to kill the officers, shoot them in the head, flee in a police car, just as the game itself trained him to do.
After his capture, Devin Moore is reported to have told police, quote, "Life is like a video game. Everybody's got to die sometime." Moore is awaiting trial in criminal court. A suit filed by the families of 2 of his victims claims that Moore acted out a scenario found in Grand Theft Auto. You, the player, are a street thug trying to take over the city. In one scenario, you can enter a police precinct, steal a uniform, free a convict from jail, escape by shooting police, and flee in a squad car.
I've now got the entire police force after me. You have to eliminate all resistance.
Nicholas Hamner, a law student at the University of Alabama, demonstrated Grand Theft Auto for us. Like millions of gamers, the overwhelming majority, he says he plays it simply for fun.
So you've already shot about 8 cops inside before you got out the door?
Looked about like that.
And now you're stealing a police car?
David Walsh, a child psychologist who's co-authored a study connecting violent video games to physical aggression, says the link can be explained in part by pioneering brain research recently done at the National Institutes of Health, which shows that the teenage brain is not fully developed.
Does repeated exposure to violent video games have more of an impact on on a teenager than it does on an adult?
It does, and that's largely because the teenage brain is different from the adult brain. The impulse control center of the brain, the part of the brain that enables us to think ahead, consider consequences, manage urges. That's the part of the brain right behind our forehead called the prefrontal cortex that's under construction during the teenage years. In fact, the wiring of that is not completed until the early 20s.
Walsh says this diminished impulse control becomes heightened in a person who has additional risk factors for criminal behavior. Devin Moore had a profoundly troubled upbringing, bouncing back and forth between a broken home and a handful of foster families.
And so when a young man with a developing brain, already angry, spends hours and hours and hours rehearsing violent acts, and then he's put in a situation of emotional stress, there's a likelihood that he will literally go to that familiar pattern that's been wired repeatedly, perhaps thousands and thousands of times.
But look, Dr. Walsh, you've got probably millions of kids out there playing violent games like Grand Theft Auto and other violent games who never hurt a fly.
Right.
So what does that do to your theory?
Yeah. Well, not every kid that plays a violent video game is going to turn to violence, and that's because they don't have all of those other risk factors going on. It's a combination of risk factors which come together in a tragic outcome.